Hello there, my wonderful brothers and sisters in the faith. If there's any brothers out there listening, may the Lord bless you. If not, that's fine. But I just want to encourage my sisters, we need each other. We really do. But getting back to what I was talking about, these plagues that are going throughout the land. There was a movie called Contagion. And if you have not seen that movie, I encourage you to buy it and watch it. Okay. And at the end of the movie, the plague was because the cook in the kitchen was fondling the meat. It was a pig, I'm sure it was somebody that was against pigs or something. I guess I'm not sure. But anyways, the people who had eaten his dinner, they wanted to, thank him because he had prepared such a wonderful dinner. And the guy didn't wash his hands, and he shook the lady's hands, and that's exactly how the contagion started. Through a person simply not washing their hands. That's how it all started in that movie. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised. That's exactly how a lot of this stuff starts, through improper hand washing. I see people go in the bathroom, they don't wash their hands, you know? But anyways, let's move on. Since we're in the closing church age, the Laodicean church in the book of Revelation was the last church that was mentioned. And that word Laodicea means lukewarm. And so this is definitely the lukewarm church age right here. I mean, people are very, very not centered on Christ, just all the way sold out. In St. John, the 2nd chapter and the 14th verse, it says, "But I have a few things against you, because you tolerate some among you who are like Balaam, who showed Balak how to trip up the people of Israel. He taught them to worship idols by eating foods offered to idols and committing sexual sin." Okay, so this is the same thing that's happening today. Okay, you say, well, how is how is this Balak teaching me how to eat foods offered to idols and all this stuff and committing sexual sin? Well, the first thing, there are people in the church who are doing these things. They're causing people to trip up, in their faith. They're causing people to leave the church. The pastor or the leader, they may not say anything. I remember this lady, I was at this church. She came to our church, and I tell you, she was a straight out witch. It was two of them. They were truly devils. And the pastor, he just let those two women come through the church, and they caused all kind of, it was just peace, right? They came to our church, and the church was turned upside down. It was so much mess going on in the church after they came. And he wasn't saying nothing to her. He wasn't saying anything. So he was putting up with that spirit, that Balaam spirit, okay? And they are teaching people to worship idols. Well, you're saying, well, how am I doing this? Okay, well, we're going to get to that. Okay, what is causing Yahweh's people to wander off the right road? Okay. In Deuteronomy 27:15, it says, "Cursed be the man that maketh any graven or molten image, an abomination unto the Lord, the work of the hands of the craftsman, and putteth it in a secret place." Now, there were people back in those days when they would make their idols, they would have little closets and stuff for it. I guess they would have it under their beds because, some people knew that in certain areas you couldn't worship, openly like that, But nowadays, I don't think people are trying to put their graven images in any kind of secret place. I go to different stores and I see all these different statues of all these different false gods that people worship. And the funny thing about it is people buy them. They buy these things. I go back, it's not there. Somebody bought it. They're worshiping these things. Yes, so we're going to get along a little bit about what was this sin that the children of Israel had committed with Moab at Peor, at Baal of Peor, excuse me. And you can find that in Numbers 25, 5th chapter. If you want to read later, you should read it later. But the first thing was they were committing sexual, or they had been enticed into committing sexual immorality and adultery. Okay? There is a lot of sexual immorality in the church right now. There are people who are molesting young girls in the church. They're having sex with them. Honestly, I really don't understand how this can go on without people not monitoring their children. When I was at the church, I would monitor my kids. But I guess it can be done if you fool a person. It can be done. you know. Um, Now, here it says Israel's harlotry with the woman of Moab. Now, this is what happened. Now, Israel remained in Acacia Grove, and the people began to commit adultery with the women of Moab. They invited people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against him. See, remember I told you earlier, you cannot have it in both ways. You have to either join yourself to Yahweh, or you have to join yourself to Satan. You can't have both. And of course, I would be angry too. I mean, these are your people. You've done everything for them, and then these knockoffs come along, and then they're running around hanging out with them. That's the same thing with your daughters or your son. If some knockoff person comes in their life, you'll be like, honey, you need to find somebody else who's worthy of you. And I'm not saying that if a person don't have money or anything like that. I'm not talking on those lines, because sometimes people don't have money, but they're the most wonderful wives or husbands that people could have, and they can work that situation out if they come from wealthy families and stuff. But most time people want wealth to marry wealth, but as I look on the TV, I see that's not always the case. Okay. So what they did was, of course, they started. Okay, so harlotry, for those of you who don't understand that means they started to have sexual intercourse with the Moab women. Okay, the Moab women, they came to the men of Israel and they seduced them both in sexual sin and idolatry to bow down to their gods. Excuse me. The two were commonly connected in perverse forms of idol worship in the ancient world, and it's still the same today. There is nothing new under the sun. These people in these secret societies, they're doing the same thing. Okay. Now, Israel was joined to Baal of Peor. Now, you might ask, why was God so angry because they had joined themselves to Baal Peor? Okay, well, that was a demon. These are evil spirits. We're not supposed to be hooked up with them. We're supposed to be rebuking them in the name of Yeshua with the blood. Okay? Baal was the great Canaanite fertility god. That sounds like that has something to do with Easter. And the worship of Baal was a constant enticement for the children of Israel. Balaam prophesied from the high places of Baal, Numbers 22:41, possibly from this same place, Baal Peor. Now, every time there is one of these holidays, it is a constant enticement for the people of Yahweh. Okay. Now, I've already told you before that Balak could not pay Balaam enough money to curse Israel, but he was able to cause them to curse their own selves in their sin against the Lord. And he knew that if they start worshiping other false gods, that would get God angry. And that's why God is angry at us, his people today, because we are worshiping the same gods. First, we was doing it unknowingly. So, his mercy and his grace was connected to us. But now there is no excuse for this any longer. Making excuses for these holidays. There's no excuse for this. There's none. Okay? Now, we learn later in the chapter that the anger of the Lord showed itself in a plague that began to strike down thousands among Israel, and it seemed as if it were continuing until the whole nation was consumed. You know what? If it wasn't for Yahweh's grace right now, we would all be consumed right now. Okay? What an enemy could never accomplish against Israel, Israel did it to itself through disobedience. The same principle works amongst the people of Yahweh today. The mightiest attack of Satan against us can never do as much damage as our own sin and rebellion against the Lord. That's how he's getting us. That's how he's been getting me. Through me not obeying totally all the way, sold out 100%, not 99.9%, not that 666 mess. Okay. Now, I want to leave off here right now, and we're going to go to another. My time has run out a little bit, so we're going to go pick right back up and see what happens to the children of Israel.